Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Just keep yourselves on mute. That would be really appreciated. We're going to have people dropping in late, but we would like to get started on time because we've got a lot to cover and only an hour to do it. I just want to start by acknowledging that we are meeting here on stolen land. I'm on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and really acknowledge those young leaders like Seed and War who are on the front line of the climate breakdown and defending their country. And what we're talking about today has very significant meaning to First Nations people because obviously we have a huge problem with black deaths in custody in Australia. There have been at least 455 Indigenous deaths in custody since the release of the Royal Commission report into black deaths in custody, which was 30 years ago. And 18% of deaths in custody are Indigenous people, despite them only making up 3% of the population. So there's some quite significant stats there, and I just wanted to take the time to acknowledge the trauma that plays out in our society, and if there are First Nations people engaging with this, I just acknowledge that struggle and hope that we can approach this topic very respectfully in that regard. I have invited Diane here from the embassy. Diane, are you available? Are you here? Yeah, I can see you there. Might unmute you. Are you here, Diane? Can you unmute yourself and say hello? Nope. Well, hopefully she pops in. She was invited, but basically I know that her message is that the Tent Embassy is reaching its 50th anniversary, and they are making a call out for people to join them in Canberra on January 26th. And we just wanted to show our solidarity and support, and we think that that's a really amazing time to front up to that fight, and obviously a call to action there. So Canberra on next Invasion Day, as for the 50th anniversary of the embassy. I'm not here alone. I'm here with my co-pilot Lesley. And Lesley is going to take on another acknowledgement that we do in Extinction Rebellion. So I invite you to do that, Lesley. And if Diane pops up, if you can let us know, Andy, and we'll let her speak.
Okay, everyone, thanks for joining us today. Just to acknowledge the emergency, it's always a good idea to remind ourselves and ground ourselves in why we're here and why we are proposing some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So life on planet Earth is facing a crisis. We all know this. It's a crisis of our own making. And despite knowing about the dangers of burning fossil fuels for over 30 years, we have not only continued to do it, but have just increased it into ever increasing levels. We have already or soon will use up the carbon budget before irreversible tipping points are triggered. Once they're triggered, the friendly, hospitable environment that we have evolved and built our societies and our civilizations in will be gone, and life as we know it will be very different, what may be left of it. The planet will become an increasingly hostile and dangerous place to live. Best case scenarios are a world of fear, scarcity, extreme weather events, the rise of authoritarian regimes perhaps, and countless climate refugees. Worst case scenarios that have been suggested are small surviving populations of humans and animals clinging to the polar regions to escape the heat that we are bringing onto our own lovely world, or the annihilation of our species and a whole lot of others with it. I think that we in Australia have an added urgency to act, as our government seems determined to ignore the rest of the world's baby steps that they're taking in the right direction and is heading 1,000,000 miles in the wrong direction. We are world leaders in species extinction, not a title any of us should be proud of. And because they are ancient, fragile ecosystems, we will feel the effects of climate change sooner than a lot of other places. And it's because of our wealth, privilege and fossil fuel reserves that we have contributed more to the crisis than those who will probably feel its devastating effects worse and sooner. So our role in this needs to be massive to offset the part we've played, and particularly as someone of my generation and those of you who are older like me, despite many good years of work and efforts by lots of environmentalists over time, we have let our future children and grandchildren down by allowing it to get to the mess that it's in now. So I'd urge anybody of my generation to step up, take note of what we're saying tonight, and really ask yourselves what you can do. So that's that. Violet?
Great. Thanks, Lesley. Lesley and I will take a moment to introduce ourselves. We're going to talk a little bit more about civil disobedience theory and why we went to prison for 7 days. And then we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of what that actually looked like. We're going to have some time for questions at the end, and I think Andy's going to post a link on the chat now. So if you have questions throughout, just make sure you write them down in that link, and then we can address them at the end, and that will help you stay present as well, because you're not trying to hold on to your question. So for those who don't know me, my name's Violet. I'm a philosopher, I'm an auntie, I'm a musician, and I've been working full-time on the movement for about 2.5 years, unpaid. And I'm a very loud member of Extinction Rebellion, so I expect a lot of people to sort of have seen my face around, but I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that that in no way makes me in charge. We are a decentralized movement that runs on a flat structure, and we all play our role in this movement, and mine happens to be doing a lot of the talking, but I speak just as myself a lot of the time, but I do hope to do the rebellion's voice proud. And I just want to acknowledge all of the people who do work tirelessly on the rebellion, and I just want to say that I know I make a lot of mistakes, and I really try and do the right thing, but my degree didn't cover a unit in rebellion, and so I'm always willing to reflect and learn, but we're just normal people making the best out of a really difficult situation. And so I really believe that, in the movement of Extinction Rebellion, and I think that no movement is perfect, but we are in such dire circumstances that I really believe that Extinction Rebellion, what it has to offer in terms of culture and philosophy and theory of change, are the most powerful and best in the movement at the moment. And so that's me. And Lesley, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I'm 59-year-old mother of 3, grandmother of 1. My grandson's about to turn 6. I'm relatively new to active activism. I've been sitting in an armchair signing petitions for many years, but the bushfires is what propelled me out of my armchair. I believe in the power and effectiveness of civil disobedience. So when I came across Extinction Rebellion, it was an instant good fit for me, and knowing that it has a plan, because nobody else seems to have a plan. I like the idea that XR had a plan. Personally, I've come to realise that for me to consider myself a good person, I need to do the most significant and impactful actions that I can out of a sense of moral duty, and I refuse to be a bystander anymore. So that was part of why I took the step to not only be arrested, but to go to prison for 7 days, because that, to me, is the logical next step, and we'll go into civil disobedience theory in a little while. Just a few notes on going to jail. We need to point out to people that this was our experience of prison. It's not necessarily transferable to other people's experience, and we're only going to be able to share from what we know. We strongly recommend that anybody who's involved in any actions where there's even a possibility of arrest does the NVDA training. That's really valuable, and that people who are planning those actions or organising make sure that they seek out free, informed and prior consent to people who may find themselves in that situation. While everybody has to make their own decision about this, it certainly isn't something anybody can tell you to do or not to do. We would caution people to think about different aspects that may make their time in a correctional centre somewhat more difficult than ours. One of the things that, as we're talking about this, we're going to say, if you've not been arrested before, maybe that's the first step. You get arrested, you sign your bail papers, you go. But then if you want to continue in those, in causing material disturbance to the authorities, then you wait a little longer to sign your bail papers, if that's the road you want to go down, until you actually, get to a level that you're comfortable. We've got to remember that the whole point of civil disobedience is not the act of civil disobedience, it's to cause distress to the authorities. And certainly while we were in prison, we got a very strong feeling that we were distressing them, didn't we, Violet? That they did not want us there. we were a pain in their side, and they wanted us out there as quickly as possible. So that was really reassuring for me, because I thought, okay, this is good. They're not just going to take on board a couple of crazy women. They wanted us out there for probably a variety of reasons. So just moving into civil disobedience theory a bit more, we've got to remember it's not an end in itself. It's a strategy used to achieve a goal. And in this case, the goal is to put material pressure on and disrupt the normal operations of the criminal justice system. By having as many people as possible arrested, causing the resources of the police and courts to be stretched beyond their normal capabilities, is going to create stress in that system. And then to have more people going into prison situations where they are having to be accommodated, fed, have their medical needs met, transported, taken to and from court, using up those resources ultimately should put upward pressure on the people who run the criminal justice system, up to their bosses, who then send it up to the government and saying that, you're either going to have to deal with these people and negotiate with them or give us more resources. So this is the pattern of how it's worked in a lot of different civil disobedient campaigns all over the world and for a lot of different issues. So we know that the most important factor is numbers. So we need as many people as possible to engage in this kind of behaviour. The other great thing about civil disobedience is that, especially for an issue like the climate, where people, ordinary Mrs. and Mr. Australian citizen, are starting to come around to this idea. And when they see normal, ordinary looking people who are willing to go to jail for this and to put their liberty on the line, they are going to be more sympathetic and less willing to allow the authorities to continue in their wayward ways, shall we say, and continue on the death march. They've got us all. If you think about it, this is how the freedom marchers did it, the freedom bus riders did it in the civil rights protests in America and the children's marches. They were willing to put their liberty on the line and go to prison. Of course, they had hard labour and not very comfortable prisons, like, as Violet and I will tell you, is not too bad actually in the prison. And I'd just like to end this section with a lovely quote by Gandhi: first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. So we're up to the fighting section, I reckon. We've been ignored, we've been laughed at, but if we turn up in numbers in courts and watch houses and prisons, they won't be laughing at us anymore. They'll be wanting to fight us, and we'll be right there to fight back in our non-violent and peaceful way.
Beautiful. Thanks, Leslie. I noticed that Diane popped in. Diane, is your mic working? Do you want to say hello? I can see you in the participants list, but it doesn't look like you've connected your audio. You have to sort of click the little bottom button down the bottom left where it's got a microphone, and then call in. Dial in with device. You just holler as soon as you work out your tech, and if someone maybe wants to, Andy, if you could chat with her and see if you can help. Great. So yeah, I just want to say that I really wish that I didn't have to do this. You know, this strategy is something that we take very seriously. And Lesley, as I said before, Lesley and I are just normal people, just trying to do our best in outrageous times. And echo that this is our experience of a particular ward, of a particular prison, and is not a fully transferable experience. But I sort of wanted to add to the philosophy that personally, this meant to me that I got to refuse to participate in a society that is committing us to the destruction of our habitable planet. Billions of people will die if we do not take immediate action. We need to reach net zero emissions by 2025 and halt biodiversity loss immediately. And we've tried every other avenue, and yet emissions continue to rise and animal extinction rates are ever increasing. So our only avenue left is one that is used in radical times, and these are radical times. When change must happen fast and no other avenue has worked, throughout history, a small group of people rise up and declare to be disobedient until the wronged is right. And relative to the population, this group has always been small, but they speak to the injustice that many feel. They surrender their life to the average and move to a place of commitment of their life to be of a service of something greater than themselves. Historically, these people are twice as likely to succeed if they remain nonviolent. And so to remain nonviolent and to be disobedient, a protester is faced with loss of liberty. That's just the equation. And so this is a trajectory of our movement to be successful. The entrenched power will not release its hold on the state without trying to take our liberty. So we surrender it first. We make that choice and we give this power to ourselves. This is non-violence to its maximum power. And this is the gift of everything that you are in the world. It's handing back your access to society because it has failed you, and it has failed all of us. So this session is for people who are willing and wanting to commit to this strategy. But it's also information that's useful for our support crews, people who are willing to support those people willing to go to prison. And you can, this information is also relevant for those of us who skirt that line and have been arrested multiple times, because you may find yourself unexpectedly facing this, and as it's a risk that we all take. And we hope that it's helpful for you to know what it's like. And I just wanted to end this section, and we're going to start going into sort of the nuts and bolts soon, but Margaret Mead quotes, "Never doubt that a small group of people can change the world. Indeed, is the only thing that ever has." So cautions and concerns, Lesley.
That's lovely. That's lovely, Violet. We just wanted to reiterate this. We did say it in our post-release little video, but if you didn't see that, we'd like people to think more carefully about taking these steps if you're male, because our experience of prison was in a female ward, of course, and I think there's quite probably a vast difference in the unpredictability and violence levels of male sides of prisons to female sides. If you are a person of colour, if you're Indigenous, we've already covered that tonight, that Indigenous people do well in our criminal justice system. If you have active mental health issues, if you're claustrophobic, if you're like transgender or a part of a vulnerable minority, prison may not be the best option for you. We're not saying you can't do it. Nobody, of course, is ever telling anyone in exile what they can and can't do, but we'd ask you to consider it very carefully. The other thing that I did ask for a friend while we were in the prison about facilities for disabled people, and there basically are none, unfortunately. So they don't have to deal with that, so they don't have the facilities in place. It might be a big ask for someone with disabilities. We're two white, middle-class, educated, fairly confident women with loads of privilege, and that's one of the reasons that we did this, because we have the privilege to be able to do it. We know that the sanction for criminal actions in Australia is loss of liberty. You don't get beaten, you don't get raped, you don't get humiliated, you just get put in a prison, which is comfortable and all your needs are met to a degree. Yeah, so it's not necessarily transferable to other situations. I don't know what it would be like in different prisons in different states, and I'd be more wary of regional prisons than I would in the major capital cities. Just a quick note, if you're on a Centrelink benefit and you go to prison, it's cut off automatically. When you're released, you take your bail papers that you've signed to the Centrelink office and they reinstate you immediately. It wasn't a hassle for me, but I live in a regional area, so it might be a bit easier than the inner city ones. And so now we're going to talk about how we actually got to prison, because that was an interesting journey in itself. So Violet, you want to tell your story?
Sure, I'll just read one more time for Diane. I can see you've connected your audio. Did you want to jump in and say hello? Yeah. I saw. Oh, you just unmuted. Try again. Yes. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah, well, what I'm trying to tell you is they're telling lies when they have, that they don't deal with people with disability, because there was an Aboriginal woman here in Canberra who had to learn how to walk all over again. She got bashed, right? And she had to learn to walk all over again. And there's also not just things that there's another woman with mental health. Now, I don't care what they say, they lock an Aboriginal people up with mental health issues instead of putting them in appropriate places and helping them.
Yeah. Oh, they do tend to lie. That's very true. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Diane. Did you want to talk about January 26th?
Well, on the 26th of January next year is the 50th anniversary for the 10 Embassy. And we're calling out for everyone who we can get to come, to help support so we can help each other. We don't have to make every government pay, but at least this government, Scott Morrison's in, because he's got to be the biggest idiot that I've known in that's leading the country. Right, he's let how many waves of international pandemic into the country, and he's still the Prime Minister. Where's the duty of care there?
Absolutely.
Also, on the 26th, we're just trying to ask people to help us dismantle a system that is not appropriate for all of us. And, the justice system, like you mentioned, is not for anyone. It's a system that creates problems, right? You got Aboriginal deaths in custody where they've had over 300 and something recommendations. How many more consultations and recommendations does the Royal Commission have to take in before they take notice? There's still hanging points in jail. Yeah. This is something that we've got to demand that they make changes, not sit back and keep saying, whatever people are quiet, they're a part of this system.
Absolutely.
So what we want to do is change it. Our Parliament House was vacant for 15 years. My mother and other people went across there and squatted. Now, we got squatters' rights, yet they were charged with trespassing.
Wow.
You also got the culling now of kangaroos. Okay? Now, my mother fought in the high courts before that against the police, but they're still culling kangaroos. So when does this stop? Because the kangaroos was even before white people. The kangaroos was even before sheep and cattle. There's a lot of Aboriginal health, but people's health, it's not covered. They're only worried about themselves. So I think we need to be hitting the education system and marching together in solidarity to Parliament House and demand changes, not ask for them, because we are the first people of this country, and they're not taking notice of any of us, but yet they portray us as to be these violent people that we aren't. This is how they portray us in the media, but they've put us in these predicaments. It's called social inclusion and exclusion. They've created this. They create every problem that exceeds in this country, yet they're not pulled up about it. Why can't we? There's a thing here what's called treason, where they've come into our country and they haven't taken notice of the First Nations people. That's in their own law. Why aren't they being charged with treason?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, thank you so much for the Diane. And so we've got here just someone asking how can they support on January 26th? Are you calling for people to come to the embassy?
We're looking, calling for people to come to the embassy. We're also looking for financial support because we want to run something big. It's not just about protesting. We want it to be about have a big robbery where Aboriginal people get together and they have dance, they have entertainment to show the rest of the world that we don't have to go and get drunk on that day.
Yeah, and so could we also have volunteers come and help out to serve food and drinks and
Yes, stuff like that. We need stuff like that. We're going to need help with bringing artists here, like funds. You know, we're not asking for the funds directly to the embassy. If you can pay for a couple of artists to be bought to sing over for wherever they got to come. We need speakers. We're going to need, water, food, fridges, extra toilets, and extra showers and stuff like that. Understanding when we have the 26th of January, everyone usually camps on site.
Yeah, and I've got here a link. Follow on social media, Facebook/ATE Sovereignty. Does that sound right to you?
Yes, our sovereignty was never ceded. Also, I want to know if they could, Extinction Rebellion could help out with maybe getting some jumpers. Well, you won't need jumpers then, but now you might need jackets. Where I've got painting, artwork, where we need to put these things out before the government uses our words, like around NAIDOC time. Like last year, they used always was, always will be. Now, these slogans come out of the Aboriginal 10 embassy, all right? And then the government's using them. So I've got copyright on because our sovereignty was never ceded, okay?
Yep.
Now, we say the government can't go using our phrases anymore. The government has too many times. Look what they're doing. They come into our land, they stole our land. Now they're asking for us to buy our land back. We need help in saying, no, every Aboriginal person in this country should be housed for nothing. And we all should have housing, right? We shouldn't be paying rent in our own country.
Yeah.
That's insulting.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, Diane. I've got a big agenda here, and I really appreciate your platform and you sharing with us the issues that are going on there. And if people want to keep in touch, there's that link on there to keep following. And I hope that everybody keeps passing on that message stick to make it to Canberra for January 26th to support the embassy. And donate. We'll share donates and things like that as well. So we'll move on with the agenda. But thank you so much, Diane.
Yeah, I've got to go because I'm supposed to be at the gym right now. I've got to be in trouble.
You enjoy the gym. Bye, Diane.
Okay, bye.
Thanks so much. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to briefly let you know how I got into prison. So basically, a group of activists blockaded Parliament, 5 entry roads into Parliament. Some of that was done with trucks, some of that was done with cement barrels. Once I was on top of the truck, I put my hand in a pipe and I glued on inside that pipe, which made it a lot more difficult for them to cut me out. I went floppy. I went to the police station. The police tried to offer me bail there. I refused bail. I spent the night in custody and then went to the court in the morning. The judge basically, I made it clear that I wasn't applying for bail. I wasn't interested in asking for it. But then the judge felt it was his duty of care to give me bail because none of my charges were criminal offences, like to get me into prison. They were only finable offences. And so he said, sort of had a little bit of a chat with the prosecution. He was like, how likely is it that she'll reoffend? And I was like, very likely. I just made it very clear that if he let me go without trying to give me bail, like, so basically his option would be to not give me any bail conditions, so I had it would just be released. So I made it clear that if he didn't give me bail, I would reoffend, and then so he posted me bail and said it was my responsibility to sign or not, at which point I refused to sign. I was taken back under the courthouse, and several people came up to me trying to convince me to sign bail conditions. And I basically just had to keep refusing, and then finally they sort of got the idea that I was going to stay, and then I made my last phone call for the whole week. I never got my phone card working for the whole week, so I didn't get to make any communication with the outside world. But I made one last call, and then put me in this tiny, tiny little cell in a divvy van, and off to prison I went. And Lesley, how did you get into prison?
Oh, okay. Well, I don't have Violet's illustrious career. So 2 weeks prior to the budget, I actually went and glued on to the little road in front of the parliamentary forecourt with another rebel on a last generation action. So I got myself, the result of that is in Canberra, they arrest you, de-glue you, and then unarrest you and let you go. So, but we were also given a ban on approaching the parliamentary building. So come budget week, I glued on at the Comcar action on the Tuesday morning, got arrested, de-glued and unarrested again, which who knew that could even happen, but anyway. Then when I went, unfortunately, our truck blockade didn't make it. We were intercepted by the police way too soon, but I did manage to glue onto the road as part of that action. And of course, this time, because I was a repeat offender, they had to actually take me away, which was great. So I got to court, did all the usual staying in the watch house, was given no bail conditions by the magistrate because I don't have a history of, I had no convictions prior to that. I had done activism before, but no convictions were recorded, and was let go. So I thought, bugger, now I have to try to get into jail, because by this stage when I'd come out, I realised Violet had gone and I didn't want her to be in there on her own. So we hatched a very mad, quick plan for me to glue on to the front doors of Parliament House the next day, which turned out to be what did the trick, really. It's not illegal to glue yourself to the front doors of Parliament House, you might be interested to know, but I did break my ban on approaching Parliament House. Therefore, I was charged with trespass. And this time, the same judge, had to said, I have to give you bail conditions. And I went, good, are you going to sign them? I said, no. And so I finally made it a day late into prison with Violet. So it's not as easy to get into prison as you might think. It helps if you've got a bit of a long rap sheet. I think they take you a bit more seriously. But I was very relieved when I actually got there. But it was one of our one of our lovely rebels, when he was charged and came out of the court that day, said, I may have been found guilty, but I've never felt less guilty in my life. And that's pretty much sums it up, doesn't it, of how you feel, even when you get to the actual jail. So that's how you get there. Now, Violet, you can tell everybody about the lovely induction process.
Okay, induction. Yes, there is a strip search. It is half and then half. So you take off your top half, and then you put on your top half of your what we call the school uniform. Looks like my school uniform anyway. And then you take off your bottom half. It's not invasive. In Sydney, it was a much more invasive strip search where you actually have to like spread and cough and stuff. Whereas in ACT, it was just like lift up one foot, lift up the other, and then you can get dressed again. Pretty uncomfortable, but that's, part of it. We were seen by a nurse and a mental health professional. Lucky for me, the night before I had arrived, there was a riot in the men's prison, and they lit one of the buildings on fire. So everyone was a little bit stressed and tense and tired. But yeah, I had that health assessment. They got my dietary requirements. I'm vegan, and from the roster that they had 2 vegan meals that they could alternate between. So that's good to know. I had to pee in a cup while two women watched. It wasn't like a turnaround situation. It was like eyes on you to make sure that it's actually my pee, which was so cool and fun. And and that was for a drug test, obviously. I was able to purchase tobacco in the admissions, so I just made it clear straight off the bat that I was a smoker. And then, basically they asked, because I'm on patches half the time, and so it took them 3 or 4 days, though, to get me patches so I could stop smoking tobacco. So you're allowed quite a few contacts and emails and phone people and people that are allowed to come, but you need quite a lot of details for those. I think, Leslie, you go through the nuts and bolts of what details you need, but basically you need to have that stuff like written on your body, or it's potential if you have it on a piece of paper with you. They will let you use it, because they were going to let me look through my phone, but my phone battery died just as they handed it to me. So I had none of my phone numbers except for the arrestee support number on my body. So just making sure you've got quite a few numbers written on you that you want to talk about. On the second day there, my second day, Leslie's first day, the judge called us. A judge called us of her own accord and said, I want to offer you bail. I've pulled your case and I'm offering you bail. So at any point we wanted to leave, we could have. So we just have to say we're ready to sign the bail conditions. We were aiming for 7 days, and that's what we did. On the 6th day, the prison, like head hunter of the prison, came and talked to us, basically he advised us that people who were on bail don't go into general population. So we were in medium security the entire time, I don't know if they would move protesters over into general pop, especially, I don't know. Obviously, it would depend on how annoying we get, but basically, just letting you know that our experience was sort of separate to general population. Leslie.
Okay. So just quickly, when you do the strip search, they take your stuff away and they give you the lovely school uniform, which happens to be grey and maroon, Violet school colours. But it's clean. It's just not very nice or very comfortable, but they give you lots. So you get 2 complete changes of clothes. And I'm going to I took copious notes in there because boredom is an issue. And I thought I would just write it all up over the next week or so. I'll make those available somehow on technology for people who want to know what kind of toiletries they give you, how many pairs of undies they give you, all that sort of thing. So the real nuts and bolts of what you can and can't have in prison, because that's probably important for anybody who's considering doing this. So Violet, you want to talk about our lovely rooms, as I noticed you've called them?
Yes. So, can I? Okay, I can't. There it is. There it is. Never mind. Okay, so basically, this is what the area looked like, roughly. Obviously, not a one-to-one image, but they wouldn't let me take any photos randomly. So the general population area was here. There was like a guards area, and this was all glass windows, so we could see through. We were waving to some of the girls as we sort of walked around. There was a laundry, like a communal area that had like a couple of lounges and a television. There were some games around. Oh, I didn't put the table tennis table. There was a table tennis table there. A kitchen with a stove and an oven, and there was like an outdoor space here. This was all concrete, and it had like huge like fencing with barbed wire on top. It was not the most pleasant thing to look out at, but once you got your eyes past the wires, the place was just covered in bunny rabbits, so that was kind of cute, and magpies, which were beautiful. There are 5 cells down the line, and each cell has room for 2 beds. So there's a bunk bed in there. So this is what the room itself looked like. So there's your door, there's a window on the door. They come and open that window every hour and check on you, including at night. They shine a torch in. You've got a toilet here, a mirror. The toilet has a sink on top of it. You've got your shower here. The shower has a shower curtain. There are stairs here that get you up on the bunk bed. I think Lesley and I both settled into sort of the top bunk was our lounge room and the bottom bunk was our sleeping arrangements, just to like mentally divert it. But obviously if we're, filling the prison, then probably won't have that luxury. But anyway, there's a bench here. There was a television with all the live to air channels. If you were lucky, my first room didn't have all of the channels, and so they actually let me move halfway through because all I could access was news and bloody
shopping channel.
Yeah, shopping channel, which was obviously the worst, but I did lots of meditating and stuff, and then a little shelving unit there and a kettle so you could make your own stuff. There was a window. The window was obviously sealed shut, but you could see all the bunnies jumping around, and under the window there was like a vent, which was your oxygen supply. And at one point in time you could open and close the vent, but it was pretty much rusted open. So that was that. The air conditioning was pretty intense, that like our faces and everything just dried up and cracked, and like, that sounds weird, but it was a thing that we had to go through, like that happened. So anyway, okay, I think that covers it. You can smoke in the room. I found this out, and by calling the guards and asking if I could have a smoke break, and they were like, just smoke in your room. So I was like, oh, okay. And then this was actually how I started to interact with the other girls that were in that area. So there was 4 other girls in the area, and they'd sort of, when I was on my time out, which Lesley will talk about, they would call out to me and ask me to like push cigarettes under the door with a plastic knife. Things like that, yeah. But eventually this was how I started to make friends with them, and then I got to talk to them, and I got to tell them why we were there, and they were so excited that we'd scared Scott Morrison so much that he refuses to come and see the media. So they were really happy about that, and he locked himself in Parliament House. So I think that's that section.
Yep. Well, despite our best efforts, we couldn't get in with the general population because we wanted to find out what that experience was like. We did have some questions about how they would respond to people who were there voluntarily, because it's pretty mad, right, to anybody else, but lovely XR people. But that never became an issue, and through Violet's needing to share cigarettes with people, we found out that people were fine with it. They thought, I think to all the people in there, we were a bit of a novelty because, it's not every day you get 2 women who could leave prison but choose to stay there.
And
so
that won't always be the case, obviously.
Yeah, unfortunately. But anyway, we'll see how this progresses. So where we were was actually considered medium security. You're allowed out for an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon. You didn't get the whole time, all the time. There was a training on for the officers one afternoon, so we only got about half an hour out. But they did allow Violet and I to come out at the same time, which was rather nice. We felt that was, really helped both of us to be able to connect. Okay, the officers themselves, look, I found them respectful, courteous. They were even friendly at times. Like when we were saying we were desperate for something to read, they actually went around the other female wards, cell blocks, whatever, and asked if there were any books that they could bring to us. So we did end up with a couple of books to read, which was lovely. I'm not saying that that's the case for everybody who's in prison. As I said, I think our novelty value probably protected us quite a bit. And the really weird thing is they call you Miss, which, feminism? What feminism? But anyway, for some reason they call you Miss all the time, and you get used to it. So as Violet mentioned before, on the Monday we had a visit from one of the, what I would call middle management supervisor level officers, who wanted to point out that we had made our point, and people in outside of prison just forget you when you get there. And I just told her, oh, you don't know XR. Nobody out there in XR has forgotten us. They're all holding up the flags for us. And then on the Tuesday, we had the even more senior honcho guy turn up and really urging us to leave, that we'd made our point. There's not much more you can do in here. And that was when we found out we couldn't get to general population. So we thought, oh, I did make a joke to him that I didn't want to leave because I haven't finished the book I was reading. And he actually offered to give me the book. He said, take the book, just leave. Come on. He did point out, and I think it was a really good point, that prison is boring and mundane every day until the day it's not, when it goes off. And it's unpredictable. We'd had a riot in the men's section not, just before Violet had arrived. I think being in medium security where you're locked up for, basically 22 hours a day is probably safer in a way, because you are not interacting with so many people. When the cells are full, they're probably going to let more people out at a time, or they're going to run out of hours in the day. So, Violet, do you want to talk about the food? You had more interesting experience with it than me.
Yeah, so as I said, I'm vegan. There was two sort of vegan meals. One was like beans and rice, and the other was tofu and couscous. The food was okay, like it was pretty all right. I was on hunger strike for the first 3 days, and yeah, the reason I sort of decided to come off was that I felt like I wanted to. There was a few reasons, but I couldn't implement my tools. We'll talk a little bit about mental health in a minute in there, but I couldn't do yoga properly, and that's one of the things that really grounds me. And also, I wanted to come out looking healthy because I wanted to show people that it's totally doable. So the food, I got a liter of soy milk every 2 days to make my own tea. You got breakfast cereal, Wheat Bix, rice bubbles, cornflakes, muesli, and bread. So much bread. They gave you a salad sandwich for lunch, and you could order food if you're there for a longer period. You can order food and make your own food as well, from the supermarket. So, yeah, communications outside of prison. Lesley, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. I'll just add on the food thing. I'm a vegetarian. I do eat dairy, and I found the food was actually much better than I expected. Better than hospital food and better than airline food. Possibly not private.
Both.
Yeah. Okay, so as Violet said earlier, when you're inducted, you need to give the prison officers as much information as you can. You've got 5 people you're allowed to nominate as visitors, 5 people you're allowed to email, and 5 phone numbers. And they have to be individuals. They can't be organisations. You have to have all the information you possibly can. The prison will contact those people first to make sure they want to hear from you, because, of course, a lot of what's going on is people with apprehended violence orders and so forth. So that's to protect people who don't want to hear from the people in prison. I actually got my phone calls through. I got there on the Thursday, and I made my first call on Monday. For some reason, Violet's cards and numbers they gave her never worked, but I was ringing people by Monday, which was good. And I could ring. It didn't seem to be a limit on how often I could ring, but you had to leave 10 minutes between each call. So I'm not sure if that was the case. When we couldn't get the emails to work. There are computers there. There was a couple of them, but they're all dodgy. None of the keyboards worked properly, and and we couldn't log into the system, which is only for emails and educational resources. You can't go browsing Google or doing anything like that, I don't think. But maybe next time we'll be able to fill you in if we can get them to work.
So like I said, you can do grocery shopping once a week, and you can make an order form. You need money, and people on the outside, if they've got your ID number, you get given an ID number, they can put money on the card, and they do that on the prison website. You can get items delivered to you by people, but they are a bit slow to get through. So I had thermals delivered to me on Friday, and I didn't receive them until Tuesday. So as Lesley said, the bureaucracy of the place is very slow, and you just sort of have to have patience. Do you want to talk about the medical stuff?
Yep. I am on 3 prescribed medications, and for experienced people who've been arrested, you know that you can take the box with your script and your name on it into police custody if you're arrested, and the police will give you medication from that box. They won't do that in prison. They will give you what they have in stock, or they will they rang my pharmacy, so that's going to be an interesting conversation next time I go to the pharmacy about why the prison was contacting them to get copies of my scripts and then had them filled at a chemist. So it did take, because I went in on the Thursday, I think it took till about Friday for me to get all my Monday to get all my medication up and running, which is a bit of a worry. I also have a sleep apnea machine that could have been bought in, but it ended up back home without me knowing. So medical equipment can be brought in and given to you. There's one more thing I was going to say. It could take 2 to 4 weeks to see a doctor, they told me, which I found that very strange. We weren't there long enough to have to put that to the test, but that sounds like a bit of a civil rights infringement to me. I'm sure if it was an emergency, you would be able to see a doctor quicker. But it's as Violet said, it's a slow, painful, understaffed, under-resourced bureaucracy, and nobody can make a decision outside of office hours. So you have to be prepared for that and have some patience, I think.
Yeah.
Go on, Violet.
Yeah, I guess that leads into the next section, which is like the mental health of being there. So while obviously we had a television and we had a kettle and, it was sort of our own rooms, I think a lot of people, especially in Melbourne, will recognize from lockdowns and stuff that there is a mental health toll to just having to be stuck inside a small box for extended period of time. And if you're not prepared to sort of face yourself, then it can be quite a difficult and challenging experience. Part of that is, just having no control over yourself. If you want to go outside, my first cell had no sun, because I was on the wrong side of the building. And so like little things like when I moved to the other cell and had the sun in my room, like that increased my mental health so much, because just I would like start reading my book on one side of the room and then follow the sun, lie on the floor reading my book, and then move to my bed reading my book. And so it was just those little things are really, really sweet to when you have so little. And so I think I'm a person who practices a lot of gratitude and a lot of grounding in the moment, and that's what kept me strong. So it was things like turning on the shower and it was actually pretty good pressure and pretty warm, and so it was like, oh, thank goodness. And that felt like everything to me, that there was a warm hot shower. And so I did have moments of feeling really trapped though, feeling really alone, feeling very disheartened at the whole situation. Waves of climate grief. David Attenborough came on when he was looking at the Barrier Reef as a documentary, and obviously they talk about climate and extinction and all of that, and also grief in action, like anger that we had to be doing this, that I wasn't just at home, doing my family and my personal life stuff and having to be in there and feeling the weight of that responsibility and wishing that more people would join. But when these disorienting movements come, I just sort of would let them come and then use my toolkits like yoga and grounding exercises and taking care of my well-being. It was just absolutely vital having Lesley there. Even though we only got to see each other for twice for a very short period each day, it was the thing that I looked forward to each day. And I'd sort of have an idea of what I wanted to talk to her about. We would plan our what we were going to say when we got out, and sort of trade notes to read on our part time. yeah, and then, you know, when things got really bad, I also had pen and paper and would just write myself letters like, "Hey Violet, how you doing today? Like, you're okay. This is the reason why you're here," and just regrounding myself in all that stuff that can seem so far away when you're so isolated from the community and yeah, and from normal life. Yeah, and having that hug twice a day, yeah, of course. um, yeah, just make sure on the day I got out, oh yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, like, I think I spent a lot of the time, anytime these things, my mind would start to get disoriented and I'd feel down. I wouldn't let myself really acknowledge it. I kind of pushed it to the side and then, because I didn't want to spiral. And then we were waiting at the last gate on the last day to get out, and I just remember like jumping around that little room, just feeling like a willy wagtail in a small cage, and the door was about to open, and I was so ready, and I didn't realize in there how much I really appreciated my freedom until that moment. So, you know, even though we had everything that we needed and that it's something that's absolutely vital that we do, it wasn't easy in every respect. I know, Lesley, you have a different story, but I just have to speak my truth about that. So.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I do have
I just want
I
to
do
say,
have a slightly different story to Violet. Go
yeah,
on, Violet.
that's okay. I'll just let everyone know. I know we're at 5:30 now, which was the time that this was supposed to end, and we've probably got about 15 minutes more of stuff to talk through. And so we really appreciate you staying on. And if you can't stay on, that's okay. You can submit any questions that you have in that link again, and you can watch the rest of the recording when you have another moment, because it'll be on the Facebook Live. Go ahead, Lesley.
Okay. Very quick.
Oh, sorry, Lesley, your sound just cut out. Yeah. Not yet. Try again. It just clicked. Yeah, we can't hear you. No.
How about now?
Yes, now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Yeah, my life history is quite well prepared me for this adventure, because I'd lived and worked in a residential drug rehab for nearly 20 years. That's not a prison. There are psychological locks to leaving a place like that, but not physical ones. And I'm quite an extreme introvert. I do really enjoy my own company, so that was and never get any time to spend alone. So if you're an introvert, it might not be so bad for you. I am willing to go to prison again, and for longer periods of time if it helps. But you know, there were moments too when I was, not doing as well. So I had a locked-in moment where I realised I couldn't get out if I wanted to, and I thought, oh no, don't let that spiral. But it hit sort of on another level. But I could remind myself all the time, look, it was only going to be for a week. I can choose to sign my papers whenever I want to go. These are the things that kept me going. Having Violet there, because it is, you know, you do really live to that couple of hours outside your cell when you can connect with somebody important. Kept reminding myself, particularly after the pharmacy thing, was that I am not a criminal, I'm a climate activist. That really helped me to keep my perspective a little bit, because you know, you do feel a bit like a criminal because you're in a prison. And there was an interesting television show on the struggle of Black people in America, and watching that really helped me to remember the legacy of activists that have gone before us doing this. You know, we are standing on the shoulders of giants. We didn't have to invent civil disobedience. It's already been invented for us. And they had it a whole lot tougher than us. And when you consider that the thing we're fighting for is the most important issue humanity has faced, I think I'm losing sound again. So I'll just say, missing my grandson was really hard, and reminding myself that I was there for him is what kept me going. So the last thing I'd like to say is that to me, this is what XR was set up for. It's nice to do actions. It's nice to have fun. It's nice to have artwork. It's great to do all those things. But civil disobedience is the plan, and putting pressure on the authorities is the only way only hope I think we have of exerting enough pressure to get them to start acting like this is a real emergency that it is. So I would ask people out there to really think about, is this something you could possibly do? And if you joined XR like I did because you thought it might work, it's time to stand up and say, yep, I'll have a go. Yep, it's hard, but it's not as hard as you know, for me, it wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be. And it's so rewarding to know that I've done the most extreme thing that I can do to try to fix the mess we're in. So thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. Yeah, it really is, you know, so powerful. And coming out, I felt the same. I felt that I'd finally done what I knew was necessary, and I've known is necessary for months and months and months. And yeah, finally taking that step, it freed me. It freed me from the anxiety. I think one last thing, it's worth noting that definitely the fear was the most punishing part, because we had no idea what we were going into. And so we took that step to kind of try and demystify it. And we hope that we've done that job a little bit, and we're happy to take questions. We'll just have a look at those questions. But Jane, do you want to talk a little bit about what's coming up in the year? Do you want to unmute? And are you there, Jane?
It's just slow on the uptake. Look, I don't think it's a good time to talk about it a lot, but we did talk a lot in Canberra about the sort of trajectory of the year and ideas about where to head. And I think part of the point of this set of amazing disruptions in Canberra was to start off the year by having a strong position against the budget, because this was the last budget before our representatives go to the international climate talks in Glasgow. So we definitely do hope to be back there for the last time that both houses of Parliament are sitting in October, before our representatives actually leave. Like, it's going to be complicated if we have a federal election in between. Parliament might not be sitting, but it's part of a thinking about a general idea about the rest of the year, to really focus on federal things, focus on federal issues, focus on federal politicians, and focus on the international talks, to ride that wave of public interest and international interest by going back to Canberra at least one more time, and in our local actions, and probably in the Spring Rebellion, to focus on federal targets. Just keep that narrative coherent as we build towards those Glasgow talks. But I think we're looking at possibly a federal election. We're looking at the climate talks. I think definitely not to compromise our Extinction Rebellion message that the system is broken. I'm sure we will get more evidence in the federal election, whether it's this year or next, that the system is broken. And much as the international talks are really, really important, they are actually another manifestation of the broken system. So I've actually started to write just some ideas about strategy and sort of the narrative arc of the year, proposing basically a federal and international focus. I'll put the link in the chat. Victoria's going to have a discussion about it in June. Not quite sure how to go about it for other states, but maybe we need like a national discussion sometime soon as well, just to see if that general focus is appealing to people. I'll put the link in the chat anyway. If you'd like to send me comments, that would be really most welcome.
Thanks so much, Jane. And I just, reiterating that Canberra, when Parliament's sitting again in October, is where we're going to be looking at this strategy again. And and as well as obviously national movement and collaboration. And Andy's got some call to actions on how to move forward from here, because this is, as Leslie said at the start, going to prison is not your first step with this Extinction Rebellion. You have to go to NVDA. We recommend you get arrested a couple of times just to demystify that, feel what it feels like before taking this step. And how you do that is listen to what Andy's got to say. You're a bit dark, Andy, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, I guess first of all, June 10th is a round of actions around Australia and on the East Coast focusing on blockading of fuel depots. So there's a dog going wild. So if anybody is available and interested in, if you're feeling motivated now, then at 6 o'clock, so in 20 minutes, enough time for a tea break, there is another planning sort of Zoom for these actions. So just putting that link in the chat there now. And the other thing is, if we're feeling inspired, then now is the time to get involved as much as people can. So on Sunday, there is also a welcome to XR kind of Zoom, which I'll put the link in the chat. And that one is about, finding your place in a working group or being connected in and learning more about how the whole thing functions. And otherwise, of course, you got to look for your local group. And so just quickly, here's the link to find your local groups nearby. So we'll just go very, very quickly to the questions. Don't think people didn't really put many questions in, but there was some pretty straightforward ones. The first one was from Sandy is the pension also cut off? Is that what you are on, Leslie?
No, can you guys hear me? I'm actually on a job seeker payment at the moment. I would assume it is cut off. I don't know for sure, but I think the idea is that while the government's feeding you and housing you in prison, they won't be giving you any other money. So you would need to look into that before you made a commitment, because I know for some people, like on a disability pension, once you're off, it's rather hard to get back on again. So that might be something you really want to find out before you take any steps to go into the prison system.
And another question, I think it sort of was clarified about were you both held in the same cell or separately? They were held in separate cells. But Michael asked, how did the prison warden staff take the hunger strike, Violet?
Oh, they were really concerned. So they said, when I first arrived, they said that if I didn't come off hunger strike, they would put me in like maximum security watch, which is like a cell with just one glass wall. So you're just permanently observed. And they were not prepared for it in the way that like I wasn't offered electrolytes or whatever, which is apparently something that you need if you're going on hunger strike. Otherwise you risk serious damage. And but they were pretty concerned, and tempting. I remember them being like, "We've got vegan food." I was just like, "No thanks." Yeah, that's it.
Okay, well, that's actually all the questions that we have. I think now is perhaps a good time for us to put together a bit of a, round of applause for Violet and Leslie, who are two of the most hardcore, dangerous, possibly sweet climate activists in Australia. Look out, Scotty, look out, BHP, look out, Exxon, look out, Santos. These very dangerous criminals are coming for you. So maybe just a round of applause, everybody, for these brave people. Turn off your mics. Leading the vanguard, because I know for me, speaking personally, it inspired me incredibly for what I can do. And I think we all need to pull each other along. And this is what this is about. We are in such desperate situation.
It was totally worth it. It was absolutely worth it, and as I'm saying now, obviously would do again, because it really cuts through. It cuts through to people. I had so many people contacting me who hadn't talked to me about the climate before, who from my extended networks pre all of this being showing support, especially when the media backlashed while I was in there. The media, Murdoch media, started calling me violent, and yeah, and it was pretty intense. But you know, for me, that's them just fighting back, and that harkens back to that quote: "They fight you, and then you win." So, yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, let's stop the stream.